the people of sake actually brought me into sake.
Back in 1988, this place was actually in Ginza on the main drag.
At first it was kind of soy sauce, it was miso.
To the point where it actually changed my life.
New Year's Day 1989.
Not just sake as a beverage, but all the culture and history and
Welcome. This is Sake on Air, and as with last week's episode, this week we will be following up with Day 2's interviews from Aoyama Sake Flea. This biannual event brings together dozens of sake producers from all across the country, along with chefs and culinary experts, craftsmen, local food producers, and farmers, as it is held together with the Farmers Market here at the United Nations University in Tokyo. And this week we have a number of other really fantastic guests here to join us. First, we'll be joined by Dimitry Bulakh. Dimitry is not only the director of twelv, Japan, and quite likely the world's very first organic sake bar, he's also the founder of Far East Grocery, which focuses on selecting not only fantastic Japanese teas, but also teas from across China and East Asia. Here, we'll be discussing the relationship between sake and tea, the similarities and characteristics that they share, what they can learn from one another, their history and their background, as well as how they may be able to learn from one another going forward, as they're both in a bit of a struggling state, but also worlds with infinite potential. Following that conversation, we will then be joined by Katsuhiko Miyasaka, who is next in line for the throne at Miyasaka Brewing Company, the producers of Masumi Sake. Together with him, we're also joined by Fumi Yasuda, who is the international sales director for Wakaze. Together with Fumi, as well as with Katsuhiko, we get into the world of innovation and tradition in sake, and dig into this final day here at Aoyama Sake Flea. With that, here we go. And welcome to one more episode of Sake on Air, broadcasting live from Aoyama Sake Flea. For this is going to be, you might hear a little bit of applause in the background. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of sake lovers here in the area, and everybody's enjoying all the delicious food and beverages that are flowing around here. This is our third session of a special series that we're doing here, and this morning, on this beautiful Sunday morning, we have with me, as just about always, is Sebastien.
Hello, good morning, Justin.
How we doing this morning?
Well, I mean, a very exciting day, a beautiful weather here in Aoyama, and a lot of delightful sake to try.
I said it's a good way to start a Sunday. This is what Sundays are for, I think. So, and our special guest for this particular episode, Mr. Dimitry Bulakh, the director of twelv and Far East Grocery here. And the reason we brought Dimitry on is because Dimitry is steeped in the world of tea and sake. And for me personally as well, tea has been a fascinating world. It's part of my life. It's part of just being here in Japan. It's something that getting into the world of sake, I found more and more and more ties and relationships between the world of sake and tea and similarities, whether it's going out and visiting producers or just as part of daily life, as we were talking earlier, sort of about the gastronomy, just being here in Japan. And through those similarities, I think there's a lot of opportunity to introduce people who have tea, integrating tea as part of their life to the world of sake, and vice versa. So we beckoned Dimitry to join us here today to share a little bit about his work and his background and what he's been up to.
I'm happy to be sharing some information about tea and sake. Yeah, though I can talk for like hours on each of those topics, so just half an hour for both of them it's too short.
I know. We experienced that yesterday as well too. They're trying to condense everything to 30 minutes, but we'll see what we can do here. Before we get started, we like to pour a beverage. Part of the Farmers Market and our work here is supporting the producers, and if I can interest you in a glass here.
So, Dimitry, while Justin is pouring half sake for us, can you tell us a little bit about your personal background?
So I'm originally from Moscow, Russia, but I've spent half of my life here in Japan. That includes 10 years in childhood. Then we went back to Moscow, where I'm originally from. And then after graduating, I came back here. And as I've always been interested in gastronomy, while working daytime, I went to study culinary arts at night. And while doing so, I got into wine. And through wine, I came into sake. That was around 10 years ago. And in 2014, I took part in Sake Sommelier World competition, somehow managed to finish with bronze prize in it. And in since 2016, I've been director of twelv, the first ever bio sake bar in the world. Meanwhile, I've also been into tea. Also in 2016, in February, I founded my own brand of tea, Far East Grocery Tokyo, focusing on organic tea producers from south of Japan, and we also do some imports from Yunnan, from the birthplace of tea in China. So yeah, I'm quite deep into tea and sake.
And so you're coming from a culinary background as well too. You cook and do some of those, or
Yes. So that was my first kind of interest was cooking, and through food I came to wine, sake, tea.
what was it about sake initially, and then how did that lead you to tea? Were there events or discoveries along the way that?
Yeah, there are always, I think, specific events, some turning points. In case of sake, it was the point I realized sake is a wine made of rice. I was studying wine at the moment. At that moment, I still haven't had any good sake, I believe. But then suddenly at some oyster bar where I used to go at that time, and they usually don't serve sake, but at the moment they had a Kokuryu Hiirazu, the very limited edition of Kokuryu. That was the first time I tried sake from a wine glass, and I just realized, wow, this is a wine made of rice. And that for me opened a whole new set of values in sake. And it was a kind of a catalyst for me to start digging into it.
So it was the discovery of something, well, this is kind of like a wine made of rice, but it's not a rice wine.
Yes, of course. At that moment I wasn't that that deep, but it was for me. It was the turning point, kind of.
Yeah. So when you started twelv, you said in 2016.
Yes.
Right. Were sake and tea, were those both kind of core parts of the experience there, or did it start with one or the other? Or?
From the initially, both sake and tea were part of the design. Of course, sake takes the most part of it, but we also have a dedicated sake tea counter, kind of, and we do serve lots of cold teas, including sparkling teas and hot teas. So
Sparkling teas.
Yes, we do a cold brewed tea. So we cold brew tea, it takes, depending on the kind of tea, 24 to 72 hours, and then you infuse it with a CO2.
Beautiful, beautiful. So then what was that path? So you discovered sake, started going down that road. What was the path to tea then? What was it that led you to tea, is to start integrating that into?
What got me into tea, I think it's, it might be more interesting than just having some good glass of sake. So I was back in Moscow at that time, and I have to tell you that tea culture in Moscow is actually much more developed than in Japan right now.
Really?
In Japan there is no tea culture now.
That's
it's all in a very set shape. Meanwhile in Russia there are lots of specialized shops selling Chinese teas and other stuff. So, and in one of those specialized shops, probably around 7 or 8 years ago, I met a beautiful girl called Marina, and I just started to go into that shop to talk to her, started buying some tea, which I didn't even like at that moment. But as I continued, we started dating each other at some point, and I got more and more into tea. The topic somehow caught me. I started buying some tea from China and stuff. And 8 years later, I have my small tea company. Marina is my wife, so it has worked out somehow.
So you have a lot to thank the world of tea then.
Yes, I do.
And so that's interesting. You said that Japan doesn't have a tea culture, and that it was much more flourishing in Russia, and that your discovery, what was interesting and fascinating about the world of tea, wasn't through Japanese tea, despite you having a long history and relationship with Japan. What was it about the Japanese tea that at first didn't catch you, or why do you think that didn't do something for you initially? And what was it about Chinese teas that, aside from the lovely lady who stole your heart?
So despite spending half of my life in Japan, I've never, actually until some point, I never loved Japanese tea. They all seem to be the same for me. Then, meanwhile, Chinese teas, they have much more variety in character. They have much more wide range of flavors, aromas, and there is, since I come from, my origin is from wine, the terroir approach, the flavor that comes from the soil is my kind of approach. That works a lot for tea. The tea leaves, they kind of, they express the flavor and the aroma of the land they grow on. And the single origin approach is much more profound in the world of Chinese tea. Meanwhile, in Japan there is the culture of googumi or blending. Like in traditional Japanese tea, you rarely know where the tea actually comes from. You know, like the name of the blender, but you don't know the name of the farmer who grew it.
Shall we toast to Japanese tea?
Yeah, so we've had this sitting here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Right.
For tea. So this single origin kind of approach was what kind of fascinated me. And I didn't, and all Japanese tea basically tasted the same for me.
Okay.
So when I first left the tea, I was searching for some organic options in Japanese tea, which is quite a rare thing actually. Like just maybe 3% of all the tea is organic. And I found this farmer Harashima-san from Yame, Fukuoka, and I tasted his tea, and that was the first time when I really tasted something that has a distinctive aroma, a distinctive flavor profile, not overwhelmed by umami, which is an important part of Japanese tea, as well as sake.
Yeah.
The savory flavor. But if you get too much of it, it just irritates your mouth. So but I think it's also kind of a like cultural problem that sake shares with teas. It has been it has become too everyday, too like close to everyday life, which is good, but it like stopped to be something special.
Yeah.
You know, and people at some moment stopped to see like the real value into that. They just got accustomed to the fact that it's always around, and that like in case of tea, you know, there is this really bad culture in Japanese restaurants of serving tea for free.
Yeah.
Green tea.
Yeah.
Like they charge you money for some crappy cup of coffee or black tea, but green tea is for free.
Yeah.
And when you do that kind of thing, somehow has to pay for that, and who ends up paying for that is the farmer at the origin, because if the consumer, the end consumer isn't paying for that, then you know all the people in between, they don't want to pay a lot of money for that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of similar in Europe. I don't know about in France, but when I was in Italy and things like that with sake, a lot of times in a lot of the places that have Japanese food signs, whether they're really Japanese food or not, you know, that's a conversation for another day. But a lot of times you get warm sake at the end of your meal as part of the experience, you know, and that doesn't necessarily add a lot of value. And doesn't require a lot of communication. It doesn't, as you're saying, doesn't communicate to people that this is something special worth paying attention to. It's more, well, it's a given that this is part of the experience if you go to these Japanese restaurants. A lot of the places that are more, you know, high-end, and a lot of places that are run by Japanese or Japanese chefs, that's not necessarily the case. But the majority of the places, like, that tends to be pretty common. Is that true in France as well?
I mean,
Do you see that?
that's what kept me away from sake for so many years, because it was even not sake or not nihonshu that we were receiving at such places, but just some distilled spirits. So.
Yeah, right? Interesting.
Actually, I have a quick question. I mean, I don't know how often you go to Russia, but how is sake doing in Russia, a country of distilled spirits?
The Japanese food culture in general, Japanese food is quite flourishing in Russia. There are like, I think about 2,000 Japanese restaurants in Russia, but sake is kind of well behind that. Most people still think that sake is a rice vodka you drink warm. That comes, I think, from the fact that a lot of sake gets imported actually from China or Korea, like in big plastic bags. That I'm not sure you can call that sake.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of sake people are accustomed to.
Yeah.
So sake culture still has a long way to go in Russia.
So we were talking a little bit before we got started here about rice and tea, both in Japan, share a rather similar origin story.
Yes, true. So that's the part that fascinates me, and that both of the things that I'm into, they originated from the most common theory is that they both originated from the upper stream of the Mekong River that flows from Himalayas through Yunnan to Indo-China Peninsula. So those upper streams of Mekong River is where they both started, and they took different routes and somehow ended up here in Japan at different timings, but still, and they really got hold of their place here. They became the indispensable part of the Japanese gastronomy, food culture, and culture in general. They got like outside of the gastronomy culture, and they shaped how the economy is here and the culture is here.
And the country, you said that I thought that was quite interesting. They shaped the landscape.
Yeah, they are also quite fascinating. So I've recently read a few books about the history of rice production here, and like the people have been literally shaping the landscape. They have been. It's mostly about water.
Yeah.
So to grow rice the Japanese way, you need lots of water. It's not just planting some seeds. You have to first to create a very complex system of irrigation so that everyone gets their share of water. Like if you look at major rivers in Japan, they have changed their riverbeds like for many times, like depending on what the demand was for the water in a certain region. And tea has been shaping the Satoyama part, the mountainous part of the scenery. Yep. Though we are now quickly losing part of that beautiful scenery with the tea fields in the mountains. But yes, so both rice and tea, they have been kind of paramount for this country for a long time. But at some point, and actually it was kind of the same point, in the mid 20th century, they suddenly lost their ground.
Yeah. And it's we talk about a lot on the show with relation to sake, is that the sake industry, while it's leaning toward a more positive trajectory, it's not healthy by any means yet. And it's in sort of a similar place, I think, in some areas as to where the tea industry is at. Whereas people aren't necessarily drinking sake, but they're also not eating rice. These are both, you're talking about having these things being so close to home as part of the gastronomy and part of people's culture, but it's from these things that shape the landscape and the people's lifestyle and their gastronomy.
And spirituality.
All these things are there, as you said, like tea. They're there, they're present, but they don't resonate in people's daily life so much.
Yeah, the Japanese eat more bread than rice nowadays. More meat than fish, more wine than sake.
Not yet.
Soon. I mean,
not soon. Hopefully not.
If you count all the other alcohols, then sake is the minor part anyway.
Yeah.
And for tea, that works the same. Like if you look at the soft drink part, the non-alcoholic drinks, the percentage of money people are spending on tea is declining each and every year. And the consumption of tea in Japan has been steadily declining through the last 50 years. Though I think so as you mentioned, sake is experiencing some minor positive trend now. And I hope at least that tea is kind of 20 years behind the sake industry.
So as an industry, just operation, the way it's sort of set up through, as you're talking about with the blending and distribution, sort of that whole system, stepping outside of that system is still much harder than it's still hard for a lot of sake breweries, but it's even much more.
Of course, even harder for tea. Because the present market system is kind of is shaped in a very non-friendly to the producer way. And there's no room for kind of a single origin farmers who really care about what kind of a tea they grow. So the quality oriented farmers had really hard time in Japan. I mean, now it's getting better with more opportunities for producers to connect directly with the consumers. But yet still, the majority is experiencing hard time from this old school market structure.
So that's we talk about that. How do you put sake producers as well as now tea producers in a position to be more in control of their own destiny? They're so separated from from their end goal. They're where they're trying to get to and who they're trying to communicate with.
It should be done,
Right. And so then with 12, so you have a beautiful space.
Thank you.
And
we tried to build something that doesn't look like your regular sake bar.
Yeah, and that's a really lovely platform for sharing sake, for sharing tea, to combat these trends, these negative trends that we're seeing. Of course, we need to reform a lot of things on the agricultural side, distribution, a lot of that. But what we can do in our position as well is on, I guess, the service end as well, and that sort of education. How are you then using 12 then as sort of a place to communicate, to share, and to educate those people who are interested in tea and sake? And how are you sort of integrating those into the experience, whether it's through tastings, through pairings? How do you sort of view that as a space and as a platform?
So, twelv was initially designed as to be a place where new people would meet sake. It's not very rarely do like sake people come to hardcore sake drinkers come to 12. It's more about blending sake with the music, like fashion, that kind of culture, making it more sexy, attracting new customers who come there for this like cool space and stuff, and then they experience the really high-end sake there. We are doing like lots of Airbnb experiences for people coming from abroad, like lecture and sake tasting. We are doing also sake pairing dinners, pairing sake not with the like traditional Japanese food. I personally think that the pairing that sake is like is that the pairing possibilities for sake go much wider than traditional Japanese food. I'm sure I'm not the only one saying that nowadays, but we do lots of pairing sake with cheese, with with Western Oriental food outside of Japan, and it seems to be working.
Nice. Are there any particular experiences or things that you do there that you find a lot of people really respond to, or that they're really surprised by, whether it's by through sake or tea? Is there anything that's like a lot of people tend to try something and go, wow, I didn't know this existed. Is there something that really resonates with people?
A few things, yes. One thing is like playing with the temperature, which is the very good part about sake. And actually about tea, depending on what temperature you infuse the tea at, you can get completely different flavors out of the same tea leaves. And same thing works for sake. So people know that sake can be cold and it can be warm. But few people have tried like same sake at different temperatures at the same time. So comparing like this, usually like it has a kind of a wow quality.
When you start playing with temperatures, the role of the servingware starts to play an important part.
Yes.
And that's a fun world to play in. And I think there's a lot of similarities there as well, too. Is there anything that...
Yes, I'm deep into wares, teaware, sakeware, and the more I go into this topic, I start to realize that good sakeware and good teaware, they can be a good sakeware can be a good teaware and vice versa. So that's also that's quite natural, because those sake and tea, those are like kind of a two huge like moving power for the shaping of the wares in Japan. It has evolved. The most expensive wares has always been for tea or for sake. Yep. And tea parties and sake parties are also kind of close experiences. People would have some sake before they have tea and stuff.
So they come from very similar places culturally and historically, and now we have a lot more fancy tools for warming and heating and serving. But a long time ago, when they didn't, there was very similar tools used for that stuff, and a lot of those things, I think they were used much more interchangeably as well too. So it's not only the shape but also of the material the wares are made of. They have impact on both on sake and on tea. It's still difficult to find a lot of wares specifically for sake outside of Japan. There's just not a lot of places where it's on offer, whereas tea is generally more accessible, I feel like. So a lot of people, when I'm talking to them, I say, if you can't find sake stuff, just find some nice tea wares, and that generally will suffice and take care of you pretty well. So
it's a good way around.
I have a question about your sake list. I mean, a lot of it is organic or quasi-organic. Am I right?
Yes,
So my question is, when you did your sake selection, did you focus on that particular segment, or did it happen that the sake you like are organic or quasi-organic?
It's a kind of a chicken and egg situation, I believe. So initially, twelv was designed to be specialized on bio sake, naturally brewed sake, and sparkling sake. Because one of the reasons that I personally love those kind of sakes. The other part is that I think that those are like this bio natural kind of a trend, and the sparkling trend, that's something that sake shares with other drinks. Like that's a trend in wine industry also, and I think it should be it can be over much more focus in sake world, though it's still not. Like I rarely do hear like this bio sake, natural sake outside of 12. Though there are a number of producers really focusing in that direction. And I do feel that a lot of customers are ready to pick up the trend.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there is no such a trend yet.
Yeah.
So
Is that about the taste or the story?
I think that those are inseparable. Kind of, story is also the part of the experience, the part of the taste. We taste with our, not only with our tongue, but with all of our 5 or 6 senses. And the story is a huge part of those senses. Yes, but I think it also impacts the flavor. The natural brewing methods, they obviously do have a different flavor profile. And it's easier to communicate that value to customers. It's not about just how much rice was polished,
Yeah, absolutely. And then I would actually really love to have you back for another episode, another day, looking at the world of organic and biosake. That's actually a conversation that I really want to dig into and delve into, because
another big conversation.
Right, exactly. That's a very big one. We've been talking about doing kind of an episode around that and sort of where that comes, because you can draw that line at so many different levels, from the rice fields to the process and all these different things. And so the communication, I would love to do an episode on that. So I would absolutely love to have you back for another full-on session of that. We're running a little low on time, sadly, as we predicted. 30 minutes goes very, very quickly.
I haven't even started.
Right, exactly. I know. I said there's a whole lot we still have to dig into here. So we are just about out of time, sadly. We are going to continue sipping on the sake and enjoying the market. twelv is going to be invading New York at some point in the near future, I heard. Is there any message you want to share with listeners about what you're up to, what you might be up to?
We are working on, so twelv was initially designed as a concept for New York, but we decided to we ended up opening the Tokyo branch first. And we've been working on opening the New York branch for more than a year now. I hope that we'll be invading New York, as you mentioned.
All right, you'll have to come back. We'll have to get into servingware and bio and organic and all that, and you'll have to give us an update as to where the world of twelv is headed at that time.
Hope to have some positive news on that.
I'm pretty sure we will. Sebastian,
Well, I mean, it's been really interesting to hear about the similarities between the tea and rice culture, their history, their common history in China, which I was not aware of. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and we will absolutely have you back again. We'd love to have you on again.
Cool.
Excellent.
Hope to be back soon.
Dimitry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Justin.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next, we're joined by Katsuhiko Miyasaka of Miyasaka Brewing Company, producers of Masumi, as well as Fumi Yasuda, Director of International Sales for Wakaze. Together with Christopher Hughes, we talk about the world of innovation and tradition in sake, and how those things both feed into one another in order to help create the next generation of amazing sake. With that, away we go.
And welcome back once again for the 4th and final special recording of Sake on Air from Aoyama Sake Flea. After 2 days of sake festival, full of food and beverage and plenty of good times, we are closing the session out with a couple more special guests. Before we get to them, first I want to introduce one of the Sake on Air partners in crime here. Next to me I have
Christopher Hughes.
Christopher Hughes, welcome back again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again.
So we managed to make it through.
Yes, we did. Yeah,
several sessions. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, been a lot of sake in between the last session.
We're doing something right.
We are indeed.
We're doing something right. And then today, we're going to be looking at sake innovation and tradition, or innovation through tradition. And so we handpicked a couple of guests, a couple of brewers who are taking part in today's festival. First, immediately to my left, I have Fumi Yasuda from Wakaze.
Hi, I'm Fumi from Wakaze Company, which is a sake starting up company. And we have been working for 3 years, since 2016. And we create some kind of new type of sake.
To her left, we have Katsuhiko Miyasaka. Welcome to the show.
Hi, my name is Katsuhiko Miyasaka, 24th generation from the Masumi Brewery, which is located in Nagano Prefecture. And I'm very happy to join, this kind of conversation.
We're really excited to have you both here because, as I mentioned, today's theme is sake, tradition, and innovation.
And I think both of you really represent unique and interesting examples of what that means right now for the sake industry. I think finally, the sake industry is starting to recognize, they're starting to understand that its tradition is one of the things that makes it really, really special. And especially overseas, a lot of people who are becoming interested in sake, they are interested in that tradition and in those stories and the culture. But in order to tell people about those stories, we have to innovate as well and come up with new products and new things. So maybe I'll start with you, Katsuhiko. You spent some time away from the brewery before coming back to join the family.
Yep.
Right? And you returned to the brewery when? How many years ago?
About 5 years ago.
Right? And so now you're working on a lot of new products, new events, communication, marketing. When it comes to tradition, right now we're sipping on a very Masumi-like sake.
Yeah, classical.
A very classical sake, and it's delicious.
Thank you very much. Yeah, before I returned to my brewery. Actually, the one we are drinking right now, this sake called Number 7. This sake was actually quite popular in overseas market already.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest customers who buy this sake is not in Japan. Actually, it's in UK.
Yes.
Yeah, the place where
we actually met in London, didn't we? The kind of first
and
time.
it's not even Japanese restaurant,
Yeah.
Since I knew that kind of things happening in the world, I got very interested in my home, like family business. So actually, that's one of the reasons why I came back to my family business.
Right. And it's interesting that in these really amazing restaurants overseas, one of your very traditional sakes is very popular and is very much appreciated.
Yeah.
But then when you return to the brewery, you're working on a lot of new things and new projects and developing new lines of sake.
Yeah,
you have the Miyasaka line and these different.
Yeah, for most of the people in industry, they think what I'm doing right now is quite new. But I don't think what I'm doing right now is not like all the new things. In the past 5 years, I've tried to bring more. How can I say? The tradition back to my family business, in terms of the product and also in terms of the style of the business. For example, we have one of the most commonly used yeast called Number 7 yeast.
That's right, yeah.
But when I came back to my family business, my father didn't use this yeast so much for the like Daiginjo and Ginjo sake. So yeah, mainly what I have done in the past is just try to use this yeast more for the most of the product.
I said sort of reaching back into
into
those traditions, right? I said that's an asset that Masumi has that no one can take away, right? That's something really special. And so to communicate and innovate on that in new and interesting ways. I want to come back to that in just a moment. Fumi.
Yes.
Wakaze makes some interesting sake.
Yes. Today I bring sake with ginger and the yuzu, the Japanese citrus, and Japanese peppers. So we blend it into the moromi. So it's inside the sake and do the fermentation with moromi and spices.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Very
thank you.
different.
Our CEO bring the ideas of mixing some spices inside it because the gin and the craft beer they are spreading all over the world and they are using some kind of Japanese spices, of course. And we believe maybe we can use some power of the botanical like gin and gingers. And when we mix it, we believe it can help to create a new culture.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Absolutely. I said creating a sake that didn't exist before
Yes.
Right.
means you have to make a place and an atmosphere and a time for people to enjoy that.
Exactly.
And that's creating culture.
Yes, we believe so.
Yeah. So is that part of the wakaze philosophy?
Well, our philosophy is spreading sake all over the world as like a wine.
So for example, I would say all of the sakes that you make are very unique
Yes.
and delicious.
Yes, thank you.
But you worked with different brewers
Yes.
at first to create those sakes. Do you know, was it difficult to convince brewers to make a sake like Fonia, like we're having now? Here, we should pour some.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And for the first time, we had a pretty difficult time to discuss with the brewers because they believe this is kind of like harming of some Japanese sake tradition. Yeah. So, but we don't want to harm the spirit of sake. We respect it, but we have to do something different to other brewers because we don't have the traditions. Of course, we just started in these 3 years. So what we want to do is respecting the sake spirit and also creating new culture, I believe.
And I think in a way, actually, you have the freedom to do that too, because if you're a brewery that has, all these years of tradition, you once, I think, described to me that you have like pillars that you can't move, because if you suddenly move the pillars of the concept of your mission of the sake that you make, the local people, the people who've been, drinking your sake for all this time, it suddenly, what the hell? What the hell is going on? Like this flavors suddenly changed,
So
and
true.
you have that kind of pressure, and not pressure, but you have this kind of responsibility in a way to kind of keep producing the same sake that you've been producing all this time.
True.
Whereas maybe Wakaze doesn't have this pressure to begin with, so you've got the freedom to kind of experiment, and create new things, and you have to, because like you say, you don't have these pillars of tradition which you can rely on.
Yes, exactly.
I said, and you're also, and a lot of people now looking at sake, they're looking at the region and sort of the connection to where the sake has been made. Masumi has a long, long history in Suwa.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a part of your tradition as well. Right? So are you working then, innovating as part of Masumi is one thing, but I imagine you want a lot of people to know about the brewery, to know about Suwa, to want to come to Suwa, to know about the area. That means you have to, work with the local area as well too.
Right.
Innovating locally as well. I imagine that's a challenge.
That's a very great word. Actually, my grandpa, he is the one, who started selling, our sake to the outside Nagano, outside our local market, to Tokyo and Osaka. And my father, he started exporting our sake to the overseas market. So maybe in my generation, what I need to do is updating or innovating our local, not the market, but maybe the culture, of the food and also the sake, to, how can I say, to let the people, from all over the world recognize it's a kind of like destination, for food and beverage.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's interesting. You said your grandfather took the sake to Tokyo. Your father took it overseas, and now in a way you have to bring it back home.
Yeah.
In a way.
And what your inspiration kind of comes from various different places, I know, because I know that you have a lot of interest in music, and recently you've been doing a lot of events or producing, sake which has kind of this musical link as well. But where did your main inspirations come from for the current kind of line that you're working on?
Actually, when I was in European countries, traveling around over there, I got my first image from maybe San Sebastien, in Spain. It's actually not a big city, but a lot of the tourists, they go to the place for enjoying the nightlife and also they're having food or the visiting some small pubs and as you know, the population in our local the countryside in Japan are declining so fast right now. So I feel like we have to do something kind of new. And we cannot, move our factory to the somewhere close to the Tokyo or somewhere else, because if we do it, we don't wanna, we cannot make the the same quality or the same taste, in different place. So if I wanna stick with the same place in Nagano, I have to do something different,
Yeah.
Absolutely, and having that sense of place is, I think, that's something that finally the market is ready for. They're really interested in. People are very interested in food and wine, and they want to know not just about a thing, but that sense of place.
Yeah.
Where
That's
did
right.
it come from, right?
the place and also the people,
Right.
who
Yeah.
actually
Exactly.
makes that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And it said to have a place like Suwa where you're not the only brewery there. There are a lot of breweries. There's a unique food culture and gastronomy there, and so tying that into anything like your number 7 that we have here to your new lines of Miyasaka as well. So you have the new Miyasaka line. What is the Miyasaka line? How would you describe?
Okay, so the Masumi is a sake we use the best how can I say, the best rice, best water, and also maybe the best yeast, for each different type of sake. So we don't actually have the concept, how can I say? I'm sorry, I'm missing the word too.
That's okay.
So Masumi, we don't set any rule, for making the sake. But as I told you, my father didn't use the number 7 yeast for the much, for the brewing sake. So when I returned to my house, to my farm house, I saw we have to something, we only use the number 7 yeast for brewing that. So that's the idea for creating, this kind of new blend.
Are you taking that sake overseas a lot then, or
no,
are you
just
taking
to
it
the Hong
primarily
Kong and Taiwan right now.
Okay, interesting.
We should maybe fill in the gaps here for our listeners. The reason why this number 7 yeast is so kind of important in this discussion is because actually Masumi Miyasaka Joso was actually the brewery where this yeast was discovered. So for them to have been the place where it was discovered and not actually use it is quite surprising to hear. And I think I have a lot of respect for the fact that you actually, you kind of went back to your roots, if you like, and started to use that yeast again.
Absolutely.
It's part of your heritage, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's very exciting. And that sense of place is very different for Wakaze.
Yes.
Yes.
Because your place is in
Sangenchaya.
In Sangenchaya.
Yeah,
It's
you've
next
built
to
a sense of
Tokyo.
place.
Yes. It only have 15 meters.
15 square meters.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it's kind of micro brewery
Yeah.
in Tokyo, but you can see all of the equipment in there. So it's see-through, I think. And what we're doing in our brewery in Sangenchaya is, recently we couldn't make the sake by ourselves because we don't have the license to make the sake. But in this July, we got a license because of the Fonia and Olbia, our 2 brands, which made by other breweries. Yeah, and finally we reached the point that we can do sake brewing by our hands.
Right.
Yeah.
So initially you worked with other brewers
Yes.
to make the types of sake that you wanted to make for Wakaze.
Yes.
And now you have the license.
Yes.
So you're then trying to make that same type of sake yourself now, or are you making a different sake?
Well, actually, it's both.
It's both, yeah.
Yes, we have 2 kind of sake, which is one is non-pressed sake. We call it dobroku.
Yep.
It's kind of hazy sake. Yeah, and we also put some botanical inside it and do the fermentation with rice and botanicals.
Yep.
And also we also have the pressed sake, which use some tea inside it. So it's similar, but actually different sake with our, our corporate sake brewer.
Okay. And I found what's interesting. So in your space that you have in Sangenjaya, which for our listeners is just a neighborhood on the outskirts of Tokyo here.
Yes.
It's a fun place to visit. Lots of good places
the
to go eat and
triangle
drink.
of Tokyo.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you're describing a place, like you said, kind of almost overseas, what would be like a brew pub or something like that.
Yes, of course.
So what you're doing isn't something entirely new, but it's incredibly rare in Japan.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yes. In sake industry, taking a new license is quite a difficult thing because some limits inside the industries. So for us, we took 3 years to take the new license, but maybe for others it could be more difficult because if they can't have some the helpers, I mean the outside brewers, they help me because they also believe the sake industry can be more innovative. Yeah, so sorry, I missed the word again.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
That's fine.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's for our listeners, it is very hard to get a license to brew sake.
Yeah.
That's
which
right.
is hard for a lot of people to understand who are overseas, who are used to that sort of DIY approach to
Yes.
home brewing and craft brewing and things like that. And so to set up an establishment like that in Tokyo to do that, that is, we keep coming back to the theme of sort of creating culture. That is creating a culture in Tokyo that doesn't exist. And so if
I
go
think,
ahead.
Wakaze, what they do is, being such great things, showcasing how we make the sake. Even, in Japan, most of the people, they don't know how to make it, It takes really hard time, and some people, they get tired of it when I, introduce it. We have to show something, with the real stuff,
Said a lot of sake brewing has been kind of in a black box for a long time. It wasn't
Exactly.
accessible to people.
Right.
And so, and I know, in Masami you tried to bring, you bring people out to the brewery and you have a space where you can introduce them to sake.
Yeah. But we are still not open, for the public.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are just, showing the inside of the brewery to the, like people who works in the beverage industry.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are actually talking, need to change, the brewery for showing more and more to
That's
the people.
right. It's actually important maybe for our listeners to understand that the brewery is not just a kind of a place you can walk into and just kind of watch the sake being made. It's actually quite a dangerous place to, and you have to have people there who can kind of show you around, but also from a safety point of view, you have to have it set up a certain way so that people can watch the brewing being done, but not in a way that's actually, dangerous to them. And that's actually quite difficult for a lot of breweries to actually kind of set the brewery up that way.
It is. It's a big cultural change.
That's
Again,
right.
the idea of opening something up to the public that never was public before.
Yes.
That you have to create a whole different mindset, way of thinking about that space and its relationship to the people, right, and to
Exactly.
consumers. And so that's a challenge. So you're taking wakaze overseas a lot nowadays as well too?
Well, we export for 6 countries, including U.S. and Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore, and France, of course, and Thailand.
Thailand?
Yes.
Okay. So when you present wakaze, what is your sales pitch? How do you explain wakaze sake?
Well,
Wakaze is...
Wakaze is, well, we call it innovative sake company.
Okay.
And this our sake can fit the cuisines all over the world because it has some acidity more than the usual sake. Like our sake has maybe 10.5 the acidity point. It's 10 times bigger than the usual sake.
That's high.
Yes.
Yeah, that's high. That's
So,
around wine territory.
Our sake can fit with some meat and cheese or some ethnic food like Thai curry and maybe some more spicy foods. Yes, it's kind of fantastic way because the people overseas can enjoy the sake with their food. Yeah, not only the Japanese food. Yes. It's
That's the
kinda-
thing, isn't it? Normally, the problem you have when you're trying to pair sake with food overseas is that lack of acidity.
Yes.
Because a lot of food overseas is made with quite a lot of oil in the cooking. It tends to be quite oily. and this acidity helps to cut through that oil. So a sake with high acidity for me is a great innovation. And I know also that Masumi makes sake with a higher acidity as well. You have your Kimoto style. This is a traditional way of making sake, and that produces naturally higher acidity, right? And that kind of the Kimoto styles of sake, I would assume, would go really well with like French food and food overseas.
The one we are drinking right now is Yamahai.
Right, the Yamahai one, yeah.
And also the number 7 is, they can create, some different type of acidity.
That's
too.
right. Yeah, it's famous for creating this higher acidity, isn't it?
Sorry to pull you out of the moment. That Kimoto sake that Chris just mentioned, actually it doesn't exist. What he was referring to was the Masumi Nanago Yamahai Daiginjo, which was the sake that we were sipping on right then and there. It is a Yamahai, not a Kimoto. As of right now, as far as we know, Masumi doesn't make any Kimoto sake. Not that we aren't open to the idea. But until that happens, we just wanted to clarify so that nobody went out on an impossible sake hunt. Anyway, for now, let's just get back to the show.
So Katsuhiko, when you go overseas and you present Masumi, are you presenting the traditional side or the innovative side, or both?
I'm actually showing, what we think, the Masumi always keep, as a root, and also what we have done in maybe like 3 or 5 years in the past. And actually, we have a subsidiary company in Hong Kong.
Okay.
We distribute not only Masumi but also the other, the brewery sake. Yeah, for example, Dasai and also, Sohomare or some other famous name. Through the kind of, the business over there, we find still, sake is kind of still, the small, comparing to like whiskey and also beer and also the wine. So I think, we still have a lot of things to do over there.
I said, getting back to that food idea, creating a culture in Japan for consuming sake, but then, as you mentioned, getting sake on the dinner table together with local foods in these different areas.
Yep.
We have to create a culture overseas as well, too.
Yep.
Yes,
Absolutely. So when you, from a wakaze perspective,
Yes.
where do you see the tradition in wakaze then? Or what do you look to for inspiration from the traditional
What is the
side?
meaning of wakaze? Is there a special meaning behind the name wakaze?
Yes, there are 2 meanings inside our names. Wakaze in the Tohoku countryside, it means the young people goes to the sake brewery and works a lot. It means wakaze. And also we want to bring the Japanese spirit outside of Japan, so brew the Japanese wind to the world, which means wano kaze.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it has
That
2
makes
meanings.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Very good. And so then what is where's the tradition in wakaze? Is there a...
Well, we do respect the sake brewing method. It's basically same as a traditional Japanese sake brewing system, but we add some new points inside.
A twist. You
Yes,
add a twist
yes.
on the tradition, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we believe is tradition should be respectful, but it could be changed also.
Yeah. So culture does change over time.
Yeah. Yes.
It does evolve
Transforms.
over time, right? What the sushi people eat today is quite different from the sushi people ate,
In the Edo era, maybe.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can say that about wine as well. Wine has transformed,
Yes.
dramatically.
Absolutely. I said, and so 30 minutes passes by very quickly.
It does.
And we are just about done. Any last message for our listeners? For example, any innovations that you are currently working on that you would like to share with our listeners, or any message?
Yeah, right now it's a different time, sake is innovating, and maybe for next 5 or 10 years, a lot of new flavors or new names will come up. So it's time, the people need to watch, what's happening in, front of their eyes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So please, come to the sake shops or the brewery more often, and listen to or the watch what they do right now. Not just my Masumi, but also the people.
Yeah, absolutely. I said there's it's interesting. You keep mentioning that just in these last 3 to 5 years, all the innovation, and it's very true.
Yeah,
There's
actually,
so
before
much
I
really-
come back, the people around the 40s, in our industry, they have done it, a lot of things.
Yeah.
Without them, we could have none like this.
Yeah, and it's really just in these last 5 to 10 years that you're really starting to see the fruits of that labor and
Yeah.
all the work that they've done is really starting to present itself in very interesting ways. And so I said, going out and exploring
I will.
is a great suggestion. That's a great way to get in touch with that innovative side of the world of sake. How about with Wakaze? Any projects underway or any new innovations that you're excited to share?
Okay, our new, the latest innovation is next year we're gonna make a sake brewer in France, and maybe some French rice, and will be the part of French sake. So, sharing the Nihonshu spirit and creating more new culture, and so, people could see the more fun of it. I hope so.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. No, that's a huge project. You guys are moving very fast.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely.
Take care of yourself. You're gonna be very busy, I think.
Oh yeah, thank you. Thanks, Harold.
Excellent. Well, we are out of time, sadly, but I want to thank you both very much for joining us today. That was fantastic to be able to hear a little bit about the traditions in both of your worlds and the innovation that you're both looking to for the future, because there's a lot of exciting stuff out there. And I hope that our listeners will Google Masumi and Wakaze and look at and examine the world of kind of what you both are really spearheading, because it's a lot of really exciting stuff out there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, thank you very much for joining
Thank you so
us.
much.
And Chris, as always, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yes.
And with that, we have made it to the end of not just this podcast, but the Aoyama Sake Flea. 2 days of sake excitement. Do you guys have fun?
Yes, of course.
It's a good event. It's always a really good event. It's always a really good time.
It already became like one of the biggest, the sake festival held in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
in Japan, maybe.
Absolutely. It is probably one of the most consistent,
Yep.
for
Yes.
sure.
Yep.
And it has a very unique crowd that really has a really nice, very natural relationship with sake. And so it's been a really, really great platform for doing that. And so said there are a lot of young brewers here, a lot of young innovative people.
Yeah. I noticed a lot of innovation, actually, not just with the sake breweries, but with the other stand stalls here, with the food and the products. There's a company selling like a wrap, which, so you don't keep using cling film, it just kind of, you can wash it. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of takeaways, actually.
That's it. Yeah, tying the world of sake together with worlds like what they've created here with the Farmers Market. I think there's a lot of innovation to do there, I think, as well as overseas as well, too. Maybe we can do some sort of a fun event overseas one day as well, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you again so much.
Thank you
very
so much.
All right.
And that wraps it up for us here at Sake on Air. As always, we would love it if you would leave your comments and reviews for us, whether it be on the Apple Podcast or Google or Stitcher or wherever it is you might be listening to us. If you have any questions, comments, or any show ideas or anything else that you'd love to share with us, feel free to get in touch with us at questions@sakeonair.com. We'll be back again in a couple weeks with some more interviews and insight into the world of sake. Until then, feel free to follow us along on any of your favorite social media at Sake on Air. Sake on Air is made possible together with the fantastic support of the Japan Sake and Shochu Makers Association. Editing and production made possible with support of Export Japan. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.